This is Teachers Talk Radio at the BETT Show.
It's magical. I mean, if I take myself back when I wrote my first children's book, came out, which is exactly 50 years ago, by the way. It was March 1974, and I couldn't possibly have imagined that any of my stuff would necessarily be, as it were, in the folk memory of people and families, and that they would say things and repeat my stuff. I had no sense of that would happen, and I've done very little television. I mean, in the way that if you do television, then these things are passed on very quickly and things become catchphrases and so on. So all this stuff has mostly come just through the books. So that's magical. People have forgotten that books can be as powerful in this century as they were in centuries past.
And do you think that kind of engagement that young people are having is important to their development?
Yes, I mean it's hard to put your finger on it, but the way in which we become more wise, the way in which we think about things, part of that can be because of the resources we have from literature. Literature is about lots of, if you like, you would call them personal and social experiments. That's what goes on in literature. Yes, what's happening is that, you know, if you just think Jack and the Beanstalk, it's an experiment. Will he be able to cope with the money that he gets from the stranger? Oh, it isn't money, it's beans. Well, what's he going to do with the beans? And his mum takes it off him and throws him out the window. Oh no, that's the end of the story. Oh no, a beanstalk grows. How's he going to cope with that? Oh, I tell you what, he's curious, he climb up it. These are all personal and social experiments. They're very poor. So that's why they're in that situation. So is this a way out of poverty? A lot of stories are like that. Hansel and Gretel is about poverty. So all these stories are like personal, as I say, personal and social experiments. So when we read them together, then you're experimenting with a sort of rehearsal of life. And that gives you more resources to cope with life itself. You know, and it can be mythic, it can be like a fairy story, it can be like a myth. You know, it can be like Odysseus and struggling with what he had to cope with, you know, with Scylla and Charybdis and Circe and the rest of them, and you think, oh wow, you know, he coped with that, I wonder whether I can cope with it. Now look, he survived, I survived. So a lot of these stories are about whether you can survive the story or survive like the character in the story. So all this gives us resources, it gives us strength, it gives us ideas and wisdom and thought, and you experience these feelings almost as if they're your own, but they're not your own. So it's very interesting and very powerful.
I think what you've described there is exactly what my Tommy there was doing in that video. Is he's using your story in this case as a kind of scaffold, a kind of thing to understand the world around him and interact with the river at the beach.
And also to sense it. You see, there they are. They're enjoying the puddles and the sand. There's this lovely texture on your feet. So the bit in the book, you know, it says thick, oozy mud. So it's sort of got a way to describe it. Then it says squelch, squirt. So you've got that onomatopoeic sound of it. So then when you play with that, as your boys are doing, when they're playing with that, then, you know, they can vary it, change it, they can go sand, sandy sand, wet sand, they could play with it, they could go through mud in the forest and then whatever. And so also books can give you a space in which to explore these things for yourself in your own language. You can get hints from books saying, oh well, I could do things like that. In fact, one of the most powerful generators of ideas and so on in books is that if you say to yourself, oh well, I could write like that, speak like that,